From recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex, I'm your host, Steve Urban, and here is your Riderflex podcast episode of the day. Was it Harry or Frank? Let's see. Wait, no, hold on.
Harvey.
Harvey, damn it. Harvey. That's right. How's Harvey doing?
He's a good boy. He's doing great. He loves having me home every day. I don't know how he's gonna deal with me going back to work.
All right.
He loves me being here. Don't you love me here? I can do this to you.
Is he still the director of marketing?
It's still the director of marketing. Yes. Well, yeah, let's dive right in and take it wherever you want to go. I'm an open book.
First thing is, what's going on with Colin? Like last time we talked, I was listening to the show when you were on previously, and I like, man, I didn't get into the personal stuff enough with him. I mean, I know one of your hobbies is obviously working out and staying in shape because you're a good looking, in shape guy. So,
thanks, man. I appreciate it. So are we rolling?
We're rolling. We're rolling. Your biceps are about as big as my chest, by the way. What are you doing over there with this?
I don't think they show up on screen, do they?
Look at that.
Yeah. My girlfriend doesn't let me work out biceps anymore. She says that it's enough. It's, so I basically, and that's, if you want to kick it off there, in 2020, so let's see. So it's March 2nd as we're recording this, right? For context, people listening. I took March 3rd, is it? Oh my God. I'm terrible with time. March 3rd. Thank you. And so I took a team fully remote on March 11th of last year. And I think that was like the day after Tom Hanks got the virus and the NBA shut down. And I just remember a year ago, all hell was breaking loose. And me personally, that was about 1 month before my then girlfriend broke up with me because, no hard feelings. Frankly, she couldn't take the stress of, being with someone who is stewarding a business through the pandemic. Like she had her own stress, and so that was kind of a watershed moment for me where like I kind of like retreated back into my shell a little bit. I stayed head down in the company. I said, okay, I have to get S&G through this. It was crazy time in March of last year where our sales dropped 30%. We had a $500,000 line of credit pulled. We were our supply chain shut down on March 24th because India shut down. As logistics were an absolute nightmare. Amazon stopped taking FBA inventory for non-essential goods. The stock market crashed 35% in a week. It was total shambles. And what we ended up doing that I think was the very first positive move for me to get my mind right was we donated 20% of our sales for 30 days to the Colorado COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund. And that really gave everybody on the team something to kind of rally around, right? I promised everybody we're gonna have no layoffs. We're gonna get through this. And we ended up donating $40,000 to COVID-19 relief in the state of Colorado over those 30 days. That was a really galvanizing moment for us. And that ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made because it ended up getting us a lot of press and attention and other things that I really wasn't considering. We didn't really put it out there aside from a blog post. And Amazon caught wind of it and they did a bunch of PR with us. We ended up going on Good Morning America in November, partially because they caught wind of that and they really liked the positivity and the story behind that, and wanted to feature us as their small business segment. And so 2020 ended up being a great year for me personally because after that March-April timeframe, which was really, I started going to therapy every week. I needed to go to someone who understood the stresses of a CEO, which is very rare to find a therapist who can kind of deal with that. Found a great guy. If anybody needs a recommendation, went to him every week, then every 2 weeks, then every month, and now I see him every quarter. But that was really impactful for me to get my head right in that time, and I'm very lucky. Sheets and Giggles, we all have $150 a month for the physical or mental health.
Ah, nice.
And and so it was. I ended up through 2020. Me personally, it was, I hate saying this because so many people lost loved ones, so many people got laid off or had horrific years. stressful years, broken
Mhm.
sanity, whatever it is, 14 million without insurance, because employment is tied to healthcare for some goddamn reason. I had the best year of my life. I lost 25 pounds. I married. I was my best friend's best man. I just officiated one of my other best friend's weddings last month. The Miami Marlins made the playoffs for the first time since I was 13.
That's right. You're from Fort Lauderdale. You're from Fort
Yeah,
Lauderdale, just for the
that's
listeners.
right.
Yep.
The Miami Heat made the NBA Finals, which is a very improbable run that was fairly lucrative for me on DraftKings.
Nice.
I met a wonderful woman named Madison who I've been dating for about 6 months now, and she is just terrific, and she also happens to be a realtor. So I bought my first house, and I move in next week. Um, and it's just, aside from not seeing my family very much and the isolation in general, it's been for me personally, a really transformative 12 months. And so that's kind of where I'm at in terms of me, the person. I turned 30 last year, and I feel better than I have in a lot of years, if not ever.
Damn, you just not turned 30. Hell, my oldest son is 30. I'm feeling pretty old right now. How did you meet a new girl in the middle of COVID? How'd you do that? Tell me about it.
The COVID dating scene was not the hottest. It was pretty dead for a while.
Right.
I'll tell you what, man. I wrote the intro to a Medium article, I think 4 or 5 times, about breakups and breakdowns during
Mhm.
COVID, because
Right.
that April 2020 timeframe was like in or out for pretty much every relationship, and I saw more engagements last year than I've ever seen in my life. Also, probably a function of being 30 years old. And I saw more breakups than I've ever seen in my life
Mm.
amongst my friend group. And I think that, people, it was a really hard time to be single and newly single,
Oh
because
yeah. Oh
you could,
yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
you couldn't go on dates. You couldn't
Yeah.
go out to a bar. You couldn't have a beer with your buddies. The healthier
Yep.
stuff, I couldn't go to yoga to get my mind right. I couldn't,
Yep.
I couldn't see my best friends. I couldn't see my family. I you're inside the whole time. You can't go outside and get some sunshine.
It
And
was suck.
that was a scary
Yeah.
moment. Yeah, it was a tough moment. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think that the people going through breakups in April deserve
Yeah.
um some type of free therapy.
Seriously, seriously,
But
if
yeah,
you were,
yeah, it's tough.
if you were alone with, and especially if you just broke up with somebody, which is
Yeah.
super emotional, and you were alone in, like, April, May of last year. Whoo, man, that's a tough. No wonder you had to sign up for therapy.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. And my couple neighbors down the hall who were total godsend for me, they ended up breaking up, unfortunately. Loved them both. And I think that in terms of how I met a girl, it was interesting. It was via it was at last day of June or the end of June.
All right.
People had started to poke their heads out a little bit. That was kind of after the 6-week shutdown, and it
Yeah,
was things were opening up a little bit. It was
a little
summer.
bit.
People
Yeah.
going. I went camping for my birthday and with some
Okay.
friends, and that was so nice to be outside with 15
Right.
people around a campfire. Still feeling like guilty, unsure what's going on with all this. And then I met her about a few weeks later at the end of June at a barbecue. A friend of mine had a
Okay.
rooftop barbecue. He invited
Okay.
5 or 6 people, and she was one of the people that was there. And she has a sustainability podcast. Actually, it's kind of funny.
Ah,
Her name's Madison Hopkins. She's like moving with Madison on Instagram,
cool.
and I say she did this as an excuse to get my number, but I just tease her with that. She said, "Oh, by the way, your company sounds awesome." As I was leaving, she was like, "I have a sustainability podcast for sustainability and home living. Would you want to be on the podcast?" I said, "Sure." So she took my number, and then we went out for a drink before the podcast to she get to know me a little bit. And it was on that first date that I was like 3 hours in. I had to ask the question. I said, "Look, are we on a date?" And I said, "Because if we're on a date," I was like, "That's great. That's fine. I'm happy to be on a date." And I'm like, "But if we're not, I don't want to say anything or like do anything like that's the wrong move or whatever it is." And I said, or, if you want to be professional and personal, I can walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. And she kind of, I remember she thought about it, and she goes, I can walk and chew bubble gum. And I was like, all right. And so then, she interviewed me for her podcast. We went on date number 2, and the rest is history from there. So
Did you guys move? Is she
uh,
living with you now? Did you guys move in? Did you buy the
no,
house
no,
together?
we're not. No, I bought the house. She was my agent. But no, I'm not moving in with her. Not yet.
Not
I
there
think
yet.
it's still a little too soon. But
Now, when you were
yeah.
at the rooftop, were you like, okay? Yeah, I think I feel something. There's something there. I feel the vibe.
I think every guy at the barbecue was like, who didn't know her, was like, what's going on? What's going on with her? She's I mean,
Uh,
she's very beautiful.
mm,
She's terrific. I'm really falling for her. And so it's been, tell you what, man, I have not been happier than I am right now in a long time. So I appreciate you asking me personally. It's definitely, it's hard to manage a company when your mind's not right. And I was like, 12 months ago, I was in a really bad place. And then the last 6 to 8 months, I've been in a really good place. And it's definitely, I think, something I've had to learn. I was funny when I was a kid, I was so critical of baseball players who were having trouble like off the field. I used to say, like, don't let the off field stuff affect the on field stuff, keep them separate.
yeah,
and
yeah,
and they're so intertwined. And
yes.
I love it. I like it when my investors and my employees, they ask me, how are you doing personally, that sort of thing. And I started to do that more. I didn't used to do that because I didn't like intertwining the personal and professional. I thought that there should be a delineation there, and I didn't want to get too familiar with my team, just in case they didn't want that intrusion into their personal lives. But I think that especially the last year, people want the phone call, how you doing? They want the I
Mm.
sent my teammates notes and gifts and stuff. And um we've had people who have gotten surgeries and people who have lost loved ones. And gifts and care packages go a really long way. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I'd say it's been one of the most challenging years, if not, I think, for everybody. So it's been a very rewarding year, though, personally, for me at least.
What were your thoughts on? I don't know how deep you want to go on this, but yeah, what were your thoughts on how COVID affected business as a business owner? What were your thoughts when you saw some businesses being forced to shut down and things like this? These guys are faced with guys, what were your thoughts? I mean, how did you react to that as an
What's your
owner?
what's your what's your listenership number again? I gotta figure out how honest I want to be. Um I
I
so
love it when
my so
I love it when I ask this
I'm
question.
quote
Everybody,
I'm quoted in a CBS article about the payroll protection program, about the PPP.
okay,
And my opinion is stated very strongly there in April of last year, which
what was
is
it?
uh, something along the lines of, it's been a total disaster, total debacle. I can't believe that this is how they set it up. That this, it's well documented. What the banks were doing was they were processing all the larger loans first, all the smaller loans second.
Mm,
I know friends who have restaurants and hairstylists and salons and companies in the travel industry, wedding industry, that went poof overnight and
yep,
needed that. And
yep.
they couldn't get their application processed for 30 or 60 days. Some of them never even got it. Some of them gave up on it because they said, I don't have a CFO. I don't have the resources for this. I don't have the time for this.
Mm,
And so, and then you see Auto Nation or Auto Trader, whichever one it was, I can't remember, get 10 million bucks, and the Lakers and Ruth Chris. And we got a PPP loan. And like I said, we had a lot of uncertainty, sales down, supply chain shut down. We had credit lines pulled. A lot of stuff was crazy. And so the it's frustrating because the program itself, I thought, was a very noble program and in an interesting thing for the government to do. And I thought it was like a very good program in principle. We got a small PPP loan. And for people who needed 50,000 bucks, 80,000 bucks, 100,000 bucks, I think it's a wonderful thing. And it was exactly what was needed. I just don't think it was executed even remotely appropriately. And I
mm,
think that the round two is also very, very poorly thought out, frankly, because our revenues for Q4 were up from 2019, but our bottom line was down, partially because the cost of logistics has skyrocketed during COVID for an e-commerce business. So even though our natural growth curve as a third-year startup is, our Q4 revenue numbers are higher than Q4 of 2019, it doesn't mean that the health of the business is any better from a bottom line perspective. And so from the increase in freight and logistics, the out of stock periods from production stoppages, the lost sales due to having no inventory, like I would have very much appreciated a second option for assistance and didn't get it. And that's okay. There are people who needed it more than us. And so I thought that overall it was just, the program is, so that's where the first place my mind goes to. In terms of what I thought in general, it's total disaster for the country, right? I mean, most other countries they had the ability to do, all right, we're going to shut down the economy and get the virus under control. And there's going to be economic hardship, and we'll pay you a monthly stipend for that. Or in the case of Sweden and other countries, we're going to stay open and we're going to have no economic hardship, and we're kind of going to let the virus take its course and have herd immunity in our population.
Which one should we have done? Which one should we have done?
We chose the worst of both worlds. We decided every other country was like, all right, we'll pick our poison, and the United States was like, let's have all the poison. And so the US was like, we'll take the 30 million laid off, and we have a for-profit privatized healthcare system, so 20 million lost their healthcare insurance in the middle of a pandemic, and it's so funny. Instead of grappling with all the, I don't even know what the percentage of small business closures are now, but I think it's something like 1 in 3 small businesses permanently closed in the US, which is absolutely insane. And it seems like we haven't had the wherewithal or the capability to have these tough conversations societally and politically in an election year, nonetheless, which is really crazy to me, about why employment is tied to healthcare, or about why there's no basic safety net for people who lose their jobs in emergencies, or why we have to fight for extra unemployment insurance, and why people can make the connection between, people are making more money on the unemployment than they are working, but not the connection between, does that mean they're not getting paid enough for the labor that they're doing? And so there's all, there was a lot of frustrating parts of it for me. The economic hardship, the business closures, those broke my heart. I mean, the deaths, the 500,000 dead is one thing.
Super sad. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I have friends that own restaurants. And like you said, some people that own salons and things. And yeah, that's, I had some very emotional conversations with these people that said, hey man, I'm looking across the street at Target and they can be open and I can't. And this fucking sucks.
It didn't make any sense. None of it made any sense. I mean, you look, and it's frustrating because, for example, my mom is on the opposite side of this stuff politically from me. I still love her. I can't stand the whole, like, people on Twitter, like, roasting their families or whatever on Instagram. I think that family is more important than politics, but like my mom and I are on the opposite side of some of this stuff. And it's funny because we both think that we're right. Whereas, and frankly, we both are, because again, if you pick your poison, if my mom had been able to wave a magic wand and say, no, everything's going to be open, the virus isn't that big of a deal, so on and so forth. I don't hate my mom, people. She's a very smart woman and has good opinions about a lot of things. That would have been a better path than the path that we went down. And if I had, my magic wand and I had been able to pay people $2,000 a month and, compensate businesses for the loss of business and state evictions and, kept people in their homes for 8 weeks and had multiple cycles of the virus and controlled the spread, that would have been a better path than the path that we went down. And instead we had this weird hybrid that didn't decentralized solution that ended up really, I think, costing a lot of people their lives and their livelihoods. And so in terms of what I think about it, I think it's been a disaster for the country. I think that the stock market isn't a reflection of reality, and I'm just completely blown away that the Dow Jones keeps hitting new record highs every day. I know. The quantitative easing is off the charts. The amount of money that the government has for that, but not for, gave people $2,600 for 12 months. Like, I think the whole thing is crazy. I think it's all. I think it's.
Are
I think
you
it's just
are you getting
hard thing.
vaccinated? Are you getting your shots, or what are your
Oh
thoughts?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Are you gonna?
That's the. I'm not. My family is not the biggest on the vaccination.
So what happens when your mom
Um,
wants to come see you? If your mom doesn't get vaccinated, she wants to come to your house and stay for a week. What happens?
Oh, I don't, it's interesting. My perspective on it is that, and I think some people will give me shit about this, but I don't think that, this stuff is worth not seeing your family, and it's worth, the mental hardship of, and the emotional hardship of being isolated and alone. At this point, we're 12 months into it. Everybody knows the risks. And if my
Okay.
family and I decide that it's worth the risk to see one another, then we will. So I don't really mind that. I don't have any health conditions I need to be concerned about. I'm more concerned for her in terms of me potentially giving it to her.
Gotcha.
But that's her call if she wants to see her son.
One
So
more COVID question, then we'll get into some business, because we can talk
yeah.
about COVID
No,
for
you
another
think,
2
I mean,
hours.
it's dominated the conversation for 12 straight months. It's crazy. It's crazy.
One more
Yeah.
quick question, kind of a funny one. Should we be wearing a mask to walk 10 feet from the front door of the restaurant to the table?
Dude, that's the funniest thing. That all this stuff is so, it just belies how little people in at the highest levels of the country, at the lowest levels of the country, it belies how little people know about the virus and how it spreads, and what's good and what's bad. I it's everybody in Denver, outdoor dining only, right? So what do? They have all these tents that are
I know.
make the outdoor indoor, and it's like, and so I think that human beings naturally gravitate towards CYA policies, cover your ass policies.
Right.
And I think
Good
that
point.
politicians are no different. And so in 2 years, when they run for reelection, they want to be able to point to what they did and say, my action saved lives. It was the best we could do at the time. It was all we knew. It was the only thing in front of us. There's so on and so forth. They're all looking for CYA stuff. I think that, there are some people who care more than others. I think it's obvious who cares more than others. I think that the authenticity is something that people can sense in 2021. And I think the inauthenticity is something else that people can sense. I think, it was wrong for certain mayors to travel and leave their cities when doing lockdown orders. And I think that it was a bonehead move for Ted Cruz to fly to Cancun 2 weeks ago in the middle of the worst disaster in Texas in quite a while. So, I don't know. I get like really into the politics of everything.
One
And
thing's
so
one
in
thing's
terms of what the policies, I think that they're just CYA stuff, and they don't really do what they, now I will say masks are better than no masks, right? Like, I mean, you're going to stop something. The going into staying outdoors is better than being indoors. Like, there's some 80-20 stuff, and I'm a big proponent of 80-20 in everything, in business and my personal life. And so I would like to see a lot of 80-20 stuff implemented where, there's no sporting events or, crowded bars or large indoor gatherings, that sort of thing. But there are, like restaurants can have people inside and eat inside, and they can have tables within 5 feet of each other, and so on and so forth. I think that if you're not going to long story short is, if you're not going to compensate people for voluntarily shutting down and staying in, then you can't expect them to, and you shouldn't ask them to.
Mm, mm.
And so you gotta do one of either.
One thing's for sure, these politicians, they're sure as hell not going to come out 6 months from now and say, yeah, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done that. You're not going to hear that.
No, never, ever. You'll never ever hear that. Never. And sorry, my dog Harvey is being total nut right
What's
now.
going on, Harvey? Tell us what's going on at S&G. I want to know what the latest is with Sheets and Giggles. I saw this new throw blanket. Give me an update. Seriously, Colin, go for it. Tell us what's new.
So Harvey is our VP of marketing, so he can tell you all about all of our new products, because he's our number one product tester for all of them. And so basically we've come out since we last spoke. We've come out with, I think we had comforters at that point, come out with this brand new heavy throw blanket, super wonderful, 100% eucalyptus lyocell. And it is just to die for. We got 4 colors of it. It's my favorite thing that we've made in quite a while, besides the sheets.
Nice.
Perfect for the couch, perfect for the winter. We got a few things on the horizon. Right now we're still with the sheets, duvet covers, comforters, everything's eucalyptus lyocell. So still, very much focused on sustainability. We have done plastic-free packaging for 15 months now. And that's saved probably about 50,000 pieces of plastic. We also moved our box to a sturdier recyclable. It was already recyclable, but a recyclable cardboard box that's more sturdy through the mail, so we can slap a label right on it in the warehouse. And we get some customers sometimes who say, my box is all scratched up and beat up, because FedEx and UPS have no regard for beautiful packaging. But it saves a corrugated cardboard box on the outside. You buy something online, and everybody is buying stuff online now, and you see all the all the packages come in the two boxes, right? The internal box and the external corrugated box. I think that's so wasteful. So we've just been very focused on sustainability in our packaging, sustainability in our carbon footprint, in our products. And we have just grown tremendously. I think when we last spoke, we've 5x'd since then. And
nice. Nice. Can you tell us what you're going to do in volume in 2021, what the goal is? You can't share that number.
The goal is 100,000 pieces moved
for the year.
Yeah, which is which based on average order size is probably like 70,000 customers.
And that versus 2020, what would 100,000 pieces in 2021 versus what'd you do in 2020?
It'll be about 2 to 2.5x growth.
Okay. Wow.
So,
congratulations.
Yeah. So we've now been in business for 3 years. 2018, it was just me in a bathrobe. 2019, it was me and 3 people. 2020, it's me and 8 full-timers and 20 part-timers, and
what's contributing? What's contributing? Yeah. Is it the awesome marketing? Is it the awesome personality of the CEO? Is it what's going on with that? How are you doing?
I don't know. I don't think about it too much. I honestly, you get to a certain point where you stop having the luxury, and I miss this, and it's actually something I need to get back in my life. That's why I hired an executive assistant recently who's been absolutely life-changing.
Nice.
But I miss the luxury of the creative time. I miss the what is working, what isn't working, what do customers have to say. And so we actually, our VP of marketing resigned 2 months ago, a little suddenly. She had other life priorities that she wanted to chase. Nonprofits were calling her, and we wish her all the best. So I've had a little CEO takeover of the marketing lead role in the last couple of months, and it's been a lot of fun. It's also just a fundamentally different role than I hired her into 18 months ago. So it was good for me to kind of get that reset in terms of what the role currently is looking like. And so it was really great for me the last couple of months. I realized a lot more about the job in its current form than I realized when I was managing her, I should say. And so I think January was our best month ever, so it was good to see that we didn't slow down despite that departure. And good. I think that you just get to a certain size, like I was gonna say, you get to a certain size where you're just constantly solving problems nonstop. You're not doing that more creative work and that more creative energy like in the question asking. And so the last 2 months I've gotten to get back into that. I've emailed, I think, 500 customers personally, and I've asked them why didn't they buy, why didn't they buy. I've gotten all that qualitative feedback, and that's been really helpful for me to dive in and take a 30,000 foot look at the brand. And what people say, good.
Well, when you need to find that new VP of marketing, I know this really cool recruiting firm called Riderflex. If you need to
I hear they're pretty expensive. I hear they take a pretty hefty fee from that starting salary.
It's the podcast guest discount for you, my friend.
No, I used to be a recruiter, so I totally get that. I should talk after the show. So basically what people are telling me is it's really heartwarming to hear. They're so 35% of people say they're looking for cooling, breathable bedding. 25% of people say they're looking for the most sustainable bedding option. So we're really getting good feedback there. And then about 10% of people say the brand. They just made them laugh. They figured, why not? Why not? So between, 75% of our customers, we're really hitting those three things: the sustainability, the coolness, and the inanity of the Sheets and Giggles brand, and that's
Very nice.
perfect. So,
Very
and then,
nice.
it's all spread out amongst a bunch of other stuff. I got resume advice from the CEO on Reddit, or, there's a really good free resume guide for anyone listening, by the way, on Reddit, if you Google Sheets and Giggles resume. Other people say I found you on Good Morning America, or I read an article about you, or 20% of people actually find us via Google search, which is really cool.
Have you had anybody from the cotton industry like try to assassinate you or anything?
Not yet. We had, it's funny. We get people on our Instagram and Facebook guides who are very passionate about cotton. They're like, I love my cotton sheets. I've used cotton my whole life. And it's like, dude, it's just a crop. Like, relax. Like, it's, like all we're saying is that it uses neonicotinoids, which are killing bird and bee populations. And you're like, people will defend anything online. If you take a stance, any stance, a stance,
anything,
yeah, you are immediately inviting the opposite viewpoint. And sometimes I don't even think people hold that viewpoint until you take that stance, and then they realize I care about this in the opposite direction, and then they'll just jump on it. And so it's really an interesting online environment to navigate. By
the way, should companies and CEOs speak out on things? Like I feel this trend. I don't remember seeing this before, but over the last year, maybe 2 years, it's like all these companies and CEOs feel like they have to say, I like blue versus green, and I have to pick a side on all these topics, and I'm gonna speak out against this or that. I'm like, okay, do we all have to like give our opinions on everything now? Is that the world we're living in? What are your thoughts there?
I think so. It's a great question. Man, I can't stand it when people do things unnecessarily. I can't stand it people do things inauthentically.
Right.
I think that if someone is being authentic, like if a CEO of a company says to their team, "Hey guys, I want to get more political. I want to get more vocal." I think that it's a good business tool for the company, and I also think that it's something that I'm passionate about. And has a conversation with people internally and says, "Are you guys comfortable with this?" And the team says, "Yeah, we're comfortable with that." Or people. Hopefully, you have a diverse network of opinions within your company, and we do. We've got conservatives, independents, and progressives who work at this company. And that being said, the sustainable pun-based bedding brand from Denver does lean a little bit to the left. Shocker. And so I think that if you're being authentic and it's something that you feel compelled to do, go for it. There's a guy on Twitter named Dan Price, who's a CEO of a company in Seattle that's very vocal, that I enjoy following on the left. There are CEOs on the right who are very vocal that I think are well spoken. I think it's all about authenticity. So I'll kind of leave it that a little bit. I will say that me personally, I remember working at companies where I had the CEO's political views impressed upon me because they were very adamant about it and very vocal about it. And it made me uncomfortable, especially when I disagree with what they had to say. And so as someone who stewards a team of, a couple dozen people, I don't think that it's appropriate for me to be overly political in terms of what I believe, because I think that it's, or with regards to religion or, personal opinions about their lives, whatever. And so I want people to feel happy working for me, comfortable working for me, proud of the work we do. And I think it's really wonderful that we've got, conservatives, independents, and progressives all working at S&G who have donated collectively 40 grand to COVID relief, who have donated tens of thousands of trees planted in areas in the U.S. that need reforestation, who, make sustainable products, and who make the world a better place. We've donated sheet sets to homeless shelters. Like, we do a lot. And everyone on the team has a lot of empathy for other people. And I think that empathy is not very political. And that's kind of where we come down on it. Now, we did make some political posts in January, in broad support of representative democracy, which I didn't think was a very controversial stance. and that we stepped in it a little bit. I think 80% of our audience was like right on, like hell yeah, and 20% was like, this makes me feel upset and uncomfortable, and we had to navigate that a little bit, and we poked fun at ourselves in the comments too. Like people called us Marxist, which is kind of funny because we're a for-profit C corp based in Delaware, and people love throwing around terms they don't understand. They were like, well, what brand of sheets do Marxists use? Because that's you guys. And I was running the comments that day. My team said, look, you can get political, but you're running the comments. And I said, okay. And so I just like popped into my head, and I just go, probably Sheets and Sickles. And and it was just like,
Oh boy.
and
Wow.
so,
Wow.
if you can't like do satire and make fun of, other people, and you can't make fun of yourself, then you shouldn't be doing it. So we had a good time. We
Two
had a good time
summaries,
with it.
two summaries right there. I think are really great that I want to just clarify before I ask you the next thing. Yeah. Number one, be authentic. What really pisses me off is the bandwagon. Like, okay, yeah, we're gonna say that too. And like, you never even like, what are you talking about? You never even talked about that for years and years. And like, all of a sudden, you're gonna like put that on your website because it's
Did
the
you
new
see
popular thing this week.
Oreo the other day tweeted out like trans people exist, which like, look, it's a good statement. It's a great statement. I'm all for it.
But
They're
exactly.
Oreo. Like what? Like you know what I mean? It's like it's a little, and also they have their own like workers' rights stuff in the past that
Yeah.
I think that a lot of companies they think that if they can throw kind of like the shiny
Yes.
sort of performative political statement out there, then it kind of like, I think Hasbro did that recently with the potato head thing where they said it, and I think that got convoluted a little bit. Apparently it wasn't exactly what they were trying to do. They were just trying to sell more accessories. But like they put out the gender neutral potato head or whatever, and then people in the comments were like, I mean, are you going to pay your workers a living wage, or like, is this what you're going to end at? You know what I mean? And so it's kind of
the
interesting.
bandwagon thing, the bandwagon stuff gets on my nerves. The whole like, hey, let's get some additional, and trust me, there's people doing this. Let's get some additional marketing. Let's get some additional eyeballs on our brand by saying X, Y, and Z. Like that stuff really gets on my nerves. And then the other thing you said that I just wanted to really compliment was, can't we all just I mean, it's okay. Like, we don't have to be so serious about everything. Everybody doesn't have to get pissed off every time somebody says something.
I'm interested mostly in policy discussions. I love talking about the philosophy behind why employment is tied to healthcare, for example, and what it would do for recruiting, for small business owners. Imagine if you could recruit somebody from Google for one of your startup clients and you didn't have to compare benefits. What an incredible advantage that would be for you and your business and your client's business if that person didn't have a 2-year-old at home locked into the best healthcare in the United States, which is an artificial barrier to entry, which creates an anti-competitive labor market because somebody's making a decision based on their child's healthcare access instead of their career trajectory and their career path. That is the conversation that I'm interested in having around healthcare, around Medicare for all, around our for-profit healthcare system.
Well, I don't know why that's more important than Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And it seems like everybody else is more interested in anger and ire and performative stuff and culture war stuff. And I don't really get into that too much. And companies love to take the culture war shots because it's an easy way to get accolades, and there is some value in it, especially for marginalized groups that need more support and more vocal support. And so I'm not going to downplay the potential benefit of more and more social acceptance of marginalized groups, but at the same time, I think that there's a performative side of politics that I see a lot of companies engage in that bothers me, and then there's an authentic, more, I think, policy and outcome driven side of politics that I'm much more interested in. And so that's, I get my conservative family members to agree all the time to my progressive policies because I frame them in a way that they help small businesses and they help individual liberties, and they're on board with that.
Would you do you check the social media for candidates before you hire them? Just curious.
No, I don't. I decide if somebody can do the job. I decide if I like them. I don't even run a
All right.
background check.
All right.
And
So if they're so now
yeah.
you're pretty progressive. You're a Colorado guy. So let me ask you this: you check the so you happen to see their Facebook and they got a giant like NRA and they're holding like I don't know an automatic weapon on their Facebook page. What are you gonna do, Colin?
We have gun owners on the team.
Okay.
You
All
know,
right.
I got a shotgun for my 10th birthday as well. I'm from South Florida.
Right.
I've
Okay.
owned guns my whole life. I don't right now, but I have.
So
And
social media, you don't base your decisions on that
no,
social media.
no, and you know, and if somebody look, if somebody wants to support the NRA, I would probably tell them that I'm not really in favor of money in politics and they shouldn't support any group that spends millions of dollars lobbying our candidates to not support their constituents. But that's my stance on general lobbying groups in general. So it's not really an NRA stance or a political side issue. It's more of like I'm not a big believer in privatized campaign finance or lobbying in general. And so we talk about this stuff at happy hours, and
I
it
know.
gets exciting, man. I
I
mean,
know.
we have different people on the team for sure.
Which is
Sure.
great, right? A diversified team is the answer. Yeah. So as long as
Oh,
they
I mean,
can, as
there's
long as they can have good conversation and just get along without pissing each other off, right? That's the key.
diversity of thought is really important to me. You
Totally.
know, where it comes from geographic representation. It comes from you know, demographic representation, but it also, frankly, comes from political representation. I think that's something kind of interesting that always gets lost a little bit in the hiring shuffle. Is everybody wants diversity of thought and background, but sometimes there can be not a lot of diversity of thought, or diversity of political opinion and worldview. And I think that's also like a nice fire starter for us internally. And it creates a lot of, you know, I mean, my director of product looks at the world very differently than my content marketing manager. And you know, I look at the world differently than my customer service reps and so on and so forth. And so when you're dealing with a consumer brand where, you know, we've got tens of thousands of customers, and you know, after this year we'll have over 100,000 customers. You know, these are Americans from every city and every state, and they're people. We have people from overseas. We have Canadian customers. Running a B2C company has given me a master's degree in psychology that like has just been so edifying for me in terms of how the average American thinks and how the average, you know, city dweller thinks or the average rural person thinks. And it's really been a really interesting edification process for me. And so yeah,
let me ask you one more question. I know we're almost out of time. One more topic I just wanted to get your thoughts on really quickly, switching gears. What's the future of remote work, my friend? What happens? Do we stay 100% remote with all these people that all they do is open a laptop for a living and they don't have to touch anything except for the keys on their laptops? Should they stay remote? Should we go to office buildings? What are your thoughts?
I have no opinion on that because I'm not an expert. So what's the future of it? I don't know. What do I think about it? I love it. I also hate it because I'm a hardcore extrovert. I am talking to my computer right now. There is no other human being here in this room with me. It's super trippy. I don't dig it. You know, I love whiteboarding. I love just the act of erasing a whiteboard and starting fresh and getting people to come up, but post-it notes on it and argue and discuss and get 7 people in a room and brainstorm. I miss that. I miss that terribly. And you can't do it on Zoom. You cannot replicate it no matter what people say. So there is a missing link to the remote work. And so S&G specifically will go to a hybrid model that we were really doing. We were already doing that sort of where we were basically saying, we've got an office, you can come into it if you like. If you don't live in Denver, you don't have to, obviously. And if you live in Denver, you don't have to come in at all if you don't want. If I have to ask people to come in, I'll say, hey, I need you here on Monday. I need you here on Wednesday. They'll come in then. And then we fly all of our out-of-towners into Denver once a month for an all-hands-on-deck meeting. And so that's the future for us. I don't know about the future for everybody else. I will say the net positive of the remote work change for millions of people dramatically outweighs the negative. And I think that if you're going from, I mean, think about this, if you're commuting 2 hours a day, right? Man.
Yep.
that is 1/12 of your day. That is 8% of your life that you're spending
Yep.
doing, and not even 8% of your life, but then in terms of your waking hours, 2 out of your 16 waking hours is 12% of your waking hours.
Yeah.
And if you're spending like 12% of your waking hours commuting, I mean that's insane. I mean, what is that like? What is it, like 40 days a year of your life that you're spending in some train or some car with traffic?
Not to mention what it's doing for the planet. All right.
Oh, yeah.
That's another hour conversation.
I think it's going to be a huge net positive. I think it's completely I think that's going to be a positive for everybody except for the commercial real estate sector. But I think that it's overall, it's been a really wonderful sea change, and people have been able to see which jobs can be done remotely, which jobs can't. And instead of the argument and the conversation, the debate and the testing about, well, let's see what happens. It's just happened. And then you can kind of be retrospective about it and say, did this work? Did this not? What didn't? What did? And I think it's going to be a huge benefit for so many people. And also, frankly, to speak politically one more time, I think it is showing kind of a stark difference in not just income inequality, but also job inequality, where there's like a class of people who are able to benefit from this, and there's a class of people who are unable to benefit from this. And I think that's also been very illuminating in terms of who we consider to be essential workers, in-person workers who have to be there. And we're arguing about whether or not a raise from $7 to $9 an hour is appropriate for some of these people. And I think it's a little gross of a conversation to have when these are the people who have, put their lives at risk and who have been considered essential, and who also, are the ones who can't benefit from the remote work change. And so I think there's a lot of interesting stuff around the remote work piece, a lot of it.
I just thought of 10 more questions I could ask you, but I know we're out of time.
We'll do this again sometime. Maybe eventually we'll talk about Sheets and Giggles instead of. By the way, I think this is more interesting. I talk about the company all day, so this is more fun for me.
By the way, sheetsgiggles.com, and you can also look up Colin McIntosh on LinkedIn, of course, and connect with him there.
I'm on Clubhouse too.
Right. Send him a bunch of LinkedIn messages. Colin likes that. He likes to get a bunch of those.